Buen día, mi gente. Have you ever said to yourself, I'm just trying to make it through this family function alive? I know I'm not alone in that. The truth is, like most of you, I am just struggling to make it through that Sunday night dinner without everyone having killed each other. And I would love to actually see what it's like to make it to dessert without having stormed off to my old room exasperated with my tres leches cake, and I always forget to bring a spoon. I'm Adriana Rojas, an IDEA consultant, inclusion, diversity, equity, and accessibility. I teach others to communicate effectively across cultures, honor our differences, lead inclusively, and empower others. At least this is what I tell my clients. Sounds really good. Just between you and me, I spend 8 hours a day teaching people to play nice, listen, and stop being jerks to one another. I have a huge family, and when it comes to relating to them, I'm trying to strike a balance among my authenticity and core values and passionate views, while being sensitive to their perspectives, their worldviews, and knowing that my chosen profession isn't their chosen profession. So I need to be careful not to shine a light too bright on things like overthrowing the patriarchy. As an IDEA consultant who happens to be Latina, I find myself tearing my hair out at the complexity of this space. I came into this work thinking I knew a lot about diversity and inclusion. And in the past 3 years, I've been challenged, and I realize I'm on the same journey as my clients. This journey of understanding, building self-awareness, providing people courageous feedback, and reining in my emotions, all for the sake of productive conversations. It's so hard. It's exhausting. As we're navigating courageous conversations, we're all entering highly emotional at different levels of understanding. We're also demanding perfection, being more competitive than collaborative, and we're being conflict avoidant or conflict explosive. And this creates a bottleneck, pressure, it disconnects us from our humanity. Yet we must talk about these things. Silence does us no good. Silence allows harm to historically marginalized communities to persist. The number one thing my clients ask me is, how do we have these conversations with our families, our friends, and our colleagues? When I started my new career, along with all the IDEA quandaries, I faced many challenges, including a global pandemic, remote work, homeschooling my daughter, shortages of toilet paper, and bacon. And that same year, we collectively witnessed so many videos of Black and brown people dying at the hands of authority figures sworn to protect them, and heard calls for racial justice and equity. All of a sudden, corporate America experienced a renaissance in shining the light on the experiences of employees in communities of color. People wanted to talk about race and racism, but were having difficulty. I'm in the business of facilitating conversations, and I'm up against the same struggles you all are. I, too, have been afraid to share. Can I share parts of my identity and experiences that may be at odds with other identities and experiences? How do we make space for everyone? No exceptions. How do I find compassion for white supremacists, people who've told me I don't belong in this country, my relatives in Florida? And I'm struggling. I can't. I know the best practices. I have the expertise, but I'm struggling to rein in my emotions. I'm angry. My entire teaching career had been in front of a classroom, teaching from a social justice lens. And now I was on 90-minute Zoom calls, talking about bias and equity. I'd ask a question like, what do you hope to get out of the session today? And I got nothing, dead silence. No one wanted to participate. Nadie. So I engaged the services of a cherished friend, Stevie J. He's a playwright and a performance artist. He uses comedy to delve into the most difficult and embarrassing topics like sex and sexuality. He's a brilliant performer, and I thought I could benefit from this expertise. After all, I'd seen myself on video, and there were definitely too many likes, and you knows. So I got Stevie on the phone, and he listened closely as I was describing the problems I was having. The Zoom conferences were excruciating. Participants were not participating. What was I doing wrong? Stevie has a knack for granting his audiences permission to feel anything. And during our one-on-one coaching sessions, he granted me and himself that same permission. And after our first session, he noticed I didn't say a single like, or you know. And I realized that wasn't the problem I was having. The issue was participants weren't feeling free enough to openly and honestly express themselves. And the Zoom calls were suffering from constipation. Following the consult, I realized that this problem was not just confined to Zoom conferences. In fact, in many parts of my life, I felt pressure to say the right thing, and I was self-censoring, even amongst my colleagues who are in the business of paving the way for open and honest dialogue. Can I really share my truth? Can I share my experiences as a daughter of immigrants? And I was afraid of how people might react or what people might say. Can I really share what's inside of me? And I know I'm not alone in this impulse to refrain from expressing myself, that this goes way beyond diversity and inclusion conversations. We're all holding something back. Painful past, difficult truths, hard questions, opinions. Everybody has one. DEI thought leader Eiko Bethia says, transformational work is relational. It's not transactional. The real work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging is about relationships. It's not a checklist, right? And we must build those relationships and understand where people are coming from in order to develop their growth in these areas. And I'm all too familiar with this form of holding back and painful conversations after years of trying to get somewhere with my family. And we're at the table, we're about a dozen people. We've all had 2 to 3 glasses of wine to help us get through the meal. My dad leads the ceremonial cutting of the avocado. He reveals the perfectly ripe fruit. And as the avocados are making their way around the table, my dad brings up a man in the grocery store. Ese tipo raro, he's weird. And each time I hear him use derogatory words to describe this young man, todos conocemos las palabras, we all know the words, I correct him. Ay, papi, he is a gay man. We make it through dinner, and we're at the sobremesa part of the meal where we sit casually talking for the next couple of hours. And my dad asked a question, is the young man at the store transgender? But this time he has a new audience, my cousin, who chimes in, I don't get it either. My mom brings the tres leches, and I'm about to dive in, and they are chatting a little bit about this young man, and then they direct the conversation to me. And once again, I am being used as a facilitator for spontaneous dialectics on gender identity and sexual orientation. And it has me exhausted. I need a break from these issues. I just want to have my tres leches. So I request a boundary. You know what? I can't go through this conversation again today. Let's talk about something else. To which my cousin says, well, you're some D&I consultant. You can't even handle a conversation. I'm a tired IDEA consultant, and I need a break from this. At which point, I pick up my tres leches, head to my old bedroom. No spoon. And as I'm sitting there, I hear my abuelita admonishing me. El que come solo, muere solo. If you eat alone, you die alone. What would it take to stay in the room? A few weeks later, at another family dinner, I'm having a really hard time at work, and I need support. Earlier that week, I gave a race equity keynote, and I lost my internet connection for a few minutes. And by the time I returned to the call, the damage had been done, and the conversation on Black Lives Matter had turned into a heated chat conversation on All Lives Matter. My colleague and I did the best we could to return to our community agreements, but employees would have to return the next day to work alongside colleagues who engage in harmful behaviors like name-calling. There are days when this work is heartbreaking. So, still feeling that raw moment, I tell my family what happened, and I have high expectations, but nobody's listening. Well, it's true. All lives matter, says my dad. And I can feel my blood boiling. And I'm back in that moment where I'd lost control of a call to empathize and understand the experiences of Black people in the United States. And here I was with my family at the dinner table, and it was happening all over again. Now, here's the thing. There would have been a time when we would have launched into a screaming match, feeling self-righteous in our beliefs. And somebody would have stormed out of the room. Okay, I would have stormed out of the room. But I chose to do something different. I took a deep breath and shifted my emotional state into one of openness and realness with those closest to me. I asked my dad, "What do you mean by that?" And he explains. Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying that all lives are important, including the lives of police officers. I also hear you say that a police officer unjustly murdered George Floyd. Did I understand you correctly? And he feels heard, and he opens up, no screaming, no yelling, no storming out of the room. And we move on to a deeper conversation on racial discrimination. My dad shares his story about immigrating to the United States in the 1970s. He was 30, my mom was 20. They learned English, they worked hourly jobs. Eventually, they moved into office salaried positions. They saved up every penny to buy their first home. When I was 2, we moved into this dream house. But our white neighbors consistently communicated to us that they did not want us living there. One neighbor screamed aliens at us every time we were in the backyard, and our living room window donned a fresh bullet hole. Welcome to the American dream. I start understanding my father a little bit better, and I see his experiences through the eyes of an adult. And I thank him for sharing. And I ask him, "Are you willing to listen to another perspective?" He smiles and said, "Yes." So I go through 200 plus years of laws and policies that center white, Christian, non-disabled men with wealth. I specifically talk about my amazing Black consulting colleagues and Black women leaders that I work with as examples of leadership and excellence. My dad asks, "Do you think discrimination is real?" My mom chimes in, "Mi amor, you had to go to accent reduction classes." As an aside to me, she says, "He doesn't remember those things." In the 1980s, the company identified foreign sounding as a barrier to managerial roles. So they took all the immigrants, mostly men, into these accent reduction classes. "Oh, that's right," my dad reminisces. "I had to fix my accent to be considered for a promotion. I had to learn how to say, 'Hand me the sheet of paper.'" Dad, the company identified you as a barrier to your own success. And this is the same exact formula for racial discrimination that American Indians, African Americans, Asians, and Hispanics experience. They make us the problem, something that needs to be fixed about us, when the real problem is a system that favors white, cisgender, straight, neurotypical men. My dad gets quiet and reflective. And I can see in him this information just churning. He's like, I never even thought of it that way. That is discrimination. And he sits there nervously folding a napkin, and I see the weight of 80 years in the way he's hunched over, in his wrinkles. All his life, he's worked twice as hard, tried to fit in, and had to prove his worth. We aren't that different. And as to be expected, my parents passed all this down to me. And I internalized this anger and made it my own. And the belief system was rock solid. This is the way the world works. It wasn't even questioned. Adriana, people will see you as different. And you're going to have to be twice as good and work twice as hard in order to accomplish your goals. My parents were telling me to lean in even before Sheryl Sandberg wrote the book. And after this conversation, my dad gets quiet again. And he said, the work you do is so hard. That was a good conversation. And I reply, I hope you enjoyed your free consult. Next time, I'm going to charge you my hourly rate. He roars in laughter, and I join in. In order to have these conversations, we really need to heal first. We need to understand ourselves and where we're coming from. We also need to make space for everyone, no exceptions. I firmly believe that, one, we need to have boundaries for conversations. What do we need from each other? 2, lead with love. 3, enter conversations with the intent to listen, not impose your worldview, not change people's minds. 4, offer positive ways to engage and model them. 5, stick to your boundaries. If something's off base, say so, name it. The last time my dad and I had a conversation, he said, that was a great debate. And I corrected him, no papi, that was a great conversation. I hope you're starting to see things from my perspective. And I said, I hope the same. Te quiero mucho, papi. Te quiero mucho, mija. And I'm here to tell you that it's okay to be in different places. And we must honor each other's dignity, our inherent value and worth. It's not a competition, it's not a debate, it's a conversation. Sanando yo, sanas tú. Sanando tú, sano yo. You heal, I heal, you heal. Stay in the room. Mil gracias.